Hey guys and girls, Bored Now back here with Rachel McDonald. On this video, we return to our top 50 TV characters list. So this is a special list to mark like 2.5 years working together on this channel. So yeah, we started it in January. That was part one. You can check that out on the channel now. So this is going to be part two. Overall, there's going to be 4 parts, and we're planning a special live stream to do the 4th and final parts. So last time we left off and we did up to 38. So this time it's going to be from 37 to 26. And let's get into it with your number 37.
Okie dokie. So my number 37 is from a little show called Pretty Little Liars, the original Pretty Little Liars, and that is Hannah Marin, who is one of the original liars, played by Ashley Benson, whom some of you will probably know from Spring Breakers. She did that movie with Vanessa Hudgens, and I think she was on the Disney Channel a bit. Hannah, so there are 4 main liars, and Hannah has always been my favorite. So Hannah Marin is a former chubby girl who has basically become the new it girl since Allison has gone missing. And she's one of those characters, a little bit like Cordelia from Buffy, where you think that she's really vapid and dumb, but she's actually really smart. She just kind of presents in a slightly vapid manner. But Hannah also has a huge heart. And for me, she was the most relatable and the most endearing of the liars. So the 4 main liars, I mean, as the show went on and the characterization got kind of, a bit shoddy, the other 3 kind of slipped off my radar. But Hannah always remained just a really fun character. Really, really funny. Ashley Benson has got really good comedic timing. Hannah has some of the funniest lines in the show. One of my favorites is when they're trying to sneak up on this girl from school who is blind, and they're making a lot of noise, and Hannah's just like, shh, Jenna can't hear us. She's blind. It's like, oh, Hannah, just why? Why do you say stupid things like that? And she also has a really good journey, because she starts out as this very meek, overweight girl, very, very insecure, on like kind of the edge of an eating disorder. And she develops into this really confident, like young woman. I mean, she still has her battles. Her mother, who was actually also on this list, played by Laura Layton, is my favorite mother in the show. And their dynamic is one of the most beautiful dynamics. They have a really gorgeous mother-daughter relationship, always there for each other, always willing to go to bat for each other, always willing to just protect each other. And their dynamic is one of my favorite things of the show. The original Pretty Little Liars, unfortunately, did go for way too long and became way too convoluted. And unfortunately, it's kind of remembered now as a bit of a joke, but it did give me Hannah Marin, who is just a beautiful, delightful character. And when I rewatched the show, she's definitely one of my favorite aspects. So she's coming in at number 37 for me. Hannah Marin from Pretty Little Liars.
Yeah, nice. I think you've definitely mentioned that character before. So the pressure continues to get me to watch Pretty Little Liars. 37. This one comes from the X-Files, but it's a character you might not necessarily expect me to go with, because I think he is quite an underrated character. He is a villain, and he debuted in season 2 of the show, although the actor Nicholas Lear, who's like a Canadian actor, he first appeared as a different character in season 1. So he had like a one-off appearance as a different character. And they obviously were so impressed with him, they brought him back in a bigger role. So the character I've gone with is Alex Krycek. So I don't know.
Oh, I know the actor, but I definitely recognize that actor, but no, I don't know the character. So let's hear.
Yeah, I think because he's one of those like character star actors, he's pretty good at playing villains, because I think he was in Vertical Limit as well. The action movie.
He was. Yes, that's where I'm recognizing him from. God, I love that movie.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough. So yeah, the way he's introduced in season 2. So this is slight spoilers. So if you've not seen season 2, maybe tune out for a few minutes. But but basically, he's introduced as Mulder's new partner, because at the start of season 2, because of Gillian Anderson's pregnancy,
yes,
they did the whole storyline where they separated them for a while and closed down the X-Files. So Yeah, Nicholas Lear as Alex Krycek with his sort of more sinister Clark Kent look about him. He played Mulder's new partner, and it turns out he was planted there to keep an eye on Mulder by the powers that be. So he played it as in, I really look up to you, Mulder. I really respect you. I want to learn from you. So they kind of did it for a few episodes where he was like saddled with Mulder, and there was some good banter back and forth with Mulder not trusting this guy outright.
Yeah.
Trust no one, of course. Soon was only going to be a short-term character, like maybe after season 2 he would be gone. But they did bring him back quite a lot in later seasons, as late as season 4, 5, maybe even later than that. But they definitely brought him back quite regularly and gave him different things to do. And I just think he's a really underrated villain. I think he's fascinating. The actor is obviously very good at playing, menacing and slimy, quite sneaky, but also quite like dark and sinister as well. But there's also layers to the character. He's not, as things develop with him, he's not an out and out bad guy. Like, he does dance between the two a little bit at times. But I think part of the fun with Alex Krycek is just figuring out his end goal sometimes, figuring out, can you trust this guy? I guess he's a little bit like Lindsay out of Angel in that regard.
Oh, okay, yeah,
because I think there are, as storylines develop, there are reasons for him to work with Mulder and Scully. So it does become a little bit of, maybe we work with him as a means to an end. So, and it's almost like the devil sometimes is better than the one you don't. But yeah, he sort of has that Lindsay type vibe where he could turn on them at any moment.
But always makes the character interesting.
Yeah, so I really like the character. I think he's underrated. I really like the actor, and I think he just gets overlooked because obviously the big villain on the show is the cigarette smoking man, and he gets a lot of the headlines and other characters. So I think it's worth flying the flag for Alex Krycek because I think he has a fascinating run on the show, and I really like that actor. So Alex Krycek is my number 37.
Very nice. Always like an underrated character. And I keep saying this, but I will get around to watching the X-Files at some point. It's a very long show, and it's going to take a lot of concentration and dedication to watch it. But no, I always love an underrated character because I love so many underrated characters myself. So great choice. All right, so moving on to number 36. So my number 36 is a character from a show that you have recently started watching at my recommendation, and you are not quite as enamored with the show as I am, but I do have a lot of nostalgia for it. So number 36 is the main villain himself, the wonderful baldy Lex Luthor from Smallville. So I have spoken about this before, but this is my favorite version of Lex. Michael Rosenbaum was made to play that role, and I absolutely love the way that Smallville plays him as a tortured villain, almost an Anakin Skywalker type descent into evil, where he does want to be good. When he starts out the series, he is technically a good guy, but there's always something a little dodgy about Lex. And I kind of like what the show does, that it shows that even when he's good, there's still some darkness in him. I think that Michael does a really good job bringing a lot of the nuances to Lex to light. Season 3 in particular, I've spoken to you about, has a fantastic arc for Lex, which really delves into his background, his childhood. There is this one episode in particular called Memoria, which is just the most heartbreaking episode possibly off Smallville. It is fantastic, and it really delves into Lex's background. And I think that towards the end of his series, when he does start to go dark, that Michael actually does that part really well as well. And it's actually really believable that this person would descend into evil, even though he's trying to resist it so much. And I just think he had such a great run on the show, and the show was never really the same without him. When he left after season 7, I kind of couldn't really stay involved with the show because he was such a big part of my enjoyment. And I think I've spoken about this before, but his relationship with Clark, oh my God, one of my favorite TV dynamics, one of my favorite ships ever. I kind of wildly swing between, oh, they're brothers, and oh no, they're in love when it comes to Clark and Lex. But there's always, regardless of how you look at it, in Smallville, there's a real tragedy to their relationship, because they do start out as such good friends, and Clark really does try to see the best in Lex, but unfortunately we know that these two are going to end up being enemies. So that always gets to me. But I just think that Lex is such a fascinating character. Smallville, in general, can be a little bit hokey. It can be a little bit cheesy and silly. It was an early 2000s show. But I think that when it comes to the characterization of Lex, in particular, the show is so strong. And I just love him so much. And it's made it very hard for me to accept kind of any other Lex Luthor, let alone Jesse Eisenberg. But but for me, Lex Luthor in Smallville will always be the ultimate Lex, because I just love how many layers they give the character, and I just love Michael Rosenbaum in the role. I think he is so great. So that is my number 36, good old Lex Luthor from Smallville.
Yeah, I can't fault that. I do think he's good in the show, and I think he is a good Lex Luthor. And at the moment, I'm at the end of season 2, so coming to this, so I need to obviously go back to it at some point. Started watching Lois and Clark, the new adventures of.
I loved Lois and Clark back in the day.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mentioned it on the TV recap, which is coming up this week. But yeah, it's one I want, and I love Terry Hatcher, and
she's a great Lois Lane. She actually is.
I think she's one of the best to play.
She is definitely, and I'm not a huge Terry Hatcher fan, so yeah, coming from me, like, I think she is one of the best Lois Lanes. She's smart, she's snappy, she doesn't take any of Clark's crap. It's really fun.
Yeah, well, I think because comedy and screwball comedy comes quite naturally to her, and there's also a really good Lex Luthor on that show as well.
Actually, yes, they do have a good Lex on that one. Yes.
Yeah. So 36 is a more modern character in a show which is still going, but a show which has one more season to go, and it's a character from Stranger Things.
Nice.
And that character is Dustin Henderson. Wonderful Dustin. And from the start of the show, he's been one of my favorite characters. He was one of the most easy to get into. He was a natural part of that group from the start. He added a lot of good comedy, a lot of good he's the goofball, the nerd of the group, but it's so hard to dislike him as well. He's so likable with it. The actor does a great job, because sometimes actors like that, or characters like that, they can go a bit too far into I'm just a rambling nerd, or I'm being quite obnoxious, I'm being a little bit sleazy, and with him it's just on the right line, and it always comes from a sincere place. It always comes from a place of, I'm finding my place in the world, and I'm just a regular kid having some fun. And he does have some great character development over the 4 seasons that we've had. He has a particularly strong, I think, season 2 and season 3. I mean, I really love his storyline in season 2 with the little pet alien which he adopts. Which is absolutely wonderful. That's a great side to his character. Really brings him out. Of course, we both love the bond he forms with Steve Harrington, which is one of those things at the start of the show. If you said those two were going to be a regular pair,
I know
you would have no idea. You would have called people crazy. But it just started, at a certain point where, Steve was going to apologize to Nancy, and you've got Dustin saying she's not in and snatching the flowers off him, and and it all started from there. That's where it all started.
And it's so good. Oh, I love it. It's so good.
And we've got some great stuff with them in the mall in season 3. I really love the trio, 4 in a way, but particularly him, Steve and Robin, because in some ways Steve and Robin, in a funny sort of way, adopt him almost.
Yeah, they do, don't they? They definitely do. Yeah.
A little bit. So I think the actor is wonderful. He's a real natural like actor, and he goes on some real changes throughout. I really love the scene with him and Nancy at like the ball at the end of season 2. That's
That
really
is very
sweet as
cute.
well. And again, very relatable, like, you know, going through how to approach girls for the first time and how to take rejection into the final season, is that we are seeing now, as he grows up, a more adult and more mature side to Dustin,
Yeah.
and maybe experiencing close personal death for the first time. And
Yes.
you've got that
Lost the
scene
baby.
at the end of season 4 with where
Oh,
he's, I think it's Eddie's father, isn't it,
Oh,
or
his uncle. Eddie's
his
uncle.
uncle,
Yeah.
yeah, who he
Oh,
has to tell, and that's a really moving scene.
it,
So I
it
think
is.
that's going to be something we see in season 5, maybe Dustin having
Yes.
to come to terms with that stuff and for the first time. So
Mhm.
he's always been one of my favorite characters on the show. I think he has some of the best dialogue, he has some of the best comedy, but he's also just a really sweet and likable character with it as well. And
Yeah.
obviously you've got the brilliant stuff with him and the never ending story girl, which
Yeah.
starts from and again, that is so
Close your
relatable.
eyes.
So cute. Again, so relatable, because you know, a lot of times, you know, if your friends don't see you around with girls and they think, yeah, this guy isn't the most confident,
Yeah.
they don't believe you. So it's a great reveal when it does turn out to be true. So yeah,
Nice.
he's had a great run on the show, and I look forward to more of him in the final season. So from Stranger Things, that is Dustin Henderson. And it's a great surname because Bigfoot and the Henderson. No, I think that's definitely a reference. So yeah.
Probably. No, that's a great choice. Dustin is a great character. When you were talking about him and Dart, I just got stuck in my head. Sorry, you killed my cat. So I love it. And yes, him and Steve. I mean, such a surprising dynamic. Like you said, if you
Mm,
watched season 1 and said, yeah, this dude and this dude are going to become like surrogate big brother and little brother, everyone would just be like, get out of here. But no, it's so good. I love in season 4 when he's teasing Steve about Nancy, and Steve's like, hey, if you keep going, I'm going to punch you so hard all your teeth are going to fall out again. And he's just like, whoa, no. And Steve's like, too mean, no, too far. We're cool. Okay. It's just so good.
yeah.
That's actually kind of cool that your number 36 is from Stranger Things, because it leads into my number 35, who is also a character from Stranger Things.
Oh wow.
Well,
Excellent.
we both love Stranger Things. We've talked
We
about it
do.
many times on this channel, even though we do have a few disagreements over which season
That's
is the
fine.
best. So my number 35 is the brilliant, tiny, adorable little 11/Jane Hopper.
Excellent.
So I always loved 11. She was my original favorite character before Steve Harrington took over. And I think Millie Bobby Brown, who, congrats, recently got married at the
I was
tender age
gonna
of
say
20.
that. Yeah,
That being
yeah.
said, as Stephen pointed out, if you've been working since you were 10, then by the time you're 20, you're probably ready to get married. So yeah, he's not quite in the
True.
same league as the rest of us. But no, 11 was, I thought, such a great character right from the beginning. You know, obviously a lot of the mystery of the show is surrounding her. We don't really get to know who she is. In that first season, she's very much nonverbal. And I just remember being absolutely blown away by Millie Bobby Brown in the first season, just how much she did with that character, how much nonverbal she did, you know, how much she was able to portray 11's trauma and, you know, all of the psychological scars that have been left on her. And I think that with almost every season, Elle has gotten better and better. She's just gotten more and more growth. You know, in season 2, we had that great dynamic with her and Hopper, where she was learning to, you know, how to accept him as her father. She was trying to find out a little bit more about herself. I don't love the Lost Sister episode. I don't think anyone really loves the Lost
No.
Sister episode. I think it was a good idea in theory, but it very badly executed. Then in season 3, I really love her little arc with Max. It's one of the few things I think season 3 did really well. That gorgeous arc where Max kind of takes her out and teaches her to be herself. You know, I really love when they go to the mall and Max says, pick something that is you, not Hopper, not Mike, you. And she actually helps Elle come out of her shell. And I really like seeing Elle gain more confidence. And then, of course, in season 4, she's got that whole storyline of facing the monster that she thinks that she is, of facing her past and of regaining her powers and of learning, you know, where she came from and what her past is, what Brennan has done to her and what's left for her in the future. And I think that Millie is so strong in this performance. I mean, everyone in Stranger Things is so good. You know, all of they struck gold with those kid actors, you know, just to get, you know, so many of them that just work so well. But Elle, to me, has always just hit me like right in the heart. I think because she is, you know, obviously the kid with the most trauma. She has been through so much, and with every step, it's her learning to grow out of that trauma and to reassert herself. I love how every season you see just a little bit more and a little bit more of her coming through. I really love in season 4 that she essentially looks like a mini Joyce. I like that she's kind of taken on the persona of her new family. You know, she's obviously looking to Joyce as her mother figure. I like that we got a little bit more of a dynamic with her and Will. I've been wanting her and Will dynamic since season 1, and they just keep like shading us on that. It's like, come on, give us more Elle and Will. They're kind of what kind of started everything to begin with, you know. But I'm really looking forward to seeing what she's going to be in season 5 and what this opening the gates of, you know, the Upside Down is going to do. She's obviously now, I think she's probably in the best place she's ever been. You know, Hopper's back, Joyce is there, Mike is there. She's got all the support that she needs. And I think for Elle, that's obviously so important to have people who support her and love her, because for the first 11 years of her life, she was not shown any of that. You know, she was only shown control and manipulation. So Stranger Things, like we've talked about, is full of fantastic characters, just chock full of like all of these great characters with great characterization. And I really do think that Elle is one of the best of them, and she's just honestly just one of my favorite characters there. Just like I said, I'm really excited to see where her story goes in season 5 and how they round that out, and hopefully they let her, you know, go on to have her life free of trauma and suffering, because the girl has suffered enough. She's done. Okay, enough already. So that's kind of perfect that your 36 led into my 35. 11 / Jane Hopper, Stranger Things.
I love when that happens. Yeah, she instantly was one of the most intriguing characters on the show, and the actress did make an impression from the start. So I think she, like everyone who watches the show, likes 11. I think it would be hard to find anyone who didn't. And I do love the father-daughter stuff with her and Hopper. I think that's wonderful. 35. I think it's the first character I've had from this show, although I'm not quite sure because the first part was a while ago now. Fisher from 6 Feet Under, played by Frances Conroy, who's a wonderful
I like
actress.
her.
She's great, yeah. I mean, you do see her pop up in other stuff, but I guess I always think of her as the mother of the Fisher family from 6 Feet Under, and definitely does some of the best dramatic acting on the show, really from the first episode. Like some of her emotionally wrenching like reactions to what she's going through in that opening episode is just so powerful and so scary, but she kind of makes it funny as well, because there is like a black humor to 6 Feet Under. So but she goes on a wonderful journey of discovery. And one of the things about her character, now obviously there's a lot of pressure, a lot of the burden placed on her, because she does get left as a single parent throughout the show. But one of the things the show does is, first of all, it looks back at her relationship in the past with her husband, Nathaniel, and it does a really great job of her, as she's going on various relationships, seeing different men, of her actually comparing them to Nathaniel, like how do they match up, and kind of just looking at the past. But I think another intriguing part of the character is this idea of, yes, she's a single parent now, so in some ways there's even more responsibility, but in some ways there's kind of less, because the kids are grown up, like they're adults, apart from Claire. I mean, she's 16, but even so, that's a teenager, and going into being an adult, and they have a very like awkward relationship because they are so different to each other, but a beautiful relationship as well at times. But yeah, I think that's an interesting side to the character, this sense of what does she do with herself now, because in many ways her children are old enough to take care of themselves. And it's just, yeah, figuring out like the dynamic of her relationships in many ways. And because she is a traditional Christian, and I think she has that thing of getting quite preachy at times and rubbing up other characters the wrong way, because Claire's very rebellious and is very like anti that kind of thing. And Nate, the Peter Kraz character, he's very much more like kind of liberal, really good dynamic and a really good character arc where she does learn things about herself. And she learns to loosen up as well as the show goes along. I think because she is the traditional, like, matriarch, if you like, and the traditional Christian set of values, then in some ways watching her experiment with things that you wouldn't expect that kind of character to do, it makes for a lot of fun. Like when she does let rip and when she like stands up to someone or just does something unexpected, it makes for a lot of fun. She has some wonderful moments with pretty much every cast member, every character. There's a nice rapport and relationship she has with the Kathy Bates character, actually, when she comes onto the show. And they strike up a good, like, friendship you maybe wouldn't expect. So, yeah, Ruth Fisher has some of the best stuff in 6 Feet Under, and that actress just nails it all the time. She knows how to make the character funny when it needs to be, but yeah, she definitely has some of the most emotional scenes in the whole show, and she plays them so well. So an unexpected character in some ways. Like, it's a good example of like 6 Feet Under subverting expectations with a character like that. So Ruth Fisher is my number 35.
Nice. Well, we've obviously talked about the fact that we will do 6 Feet Under at some point in time, and I know that it's like one of your favorite TV shows. So obviously some characters from that will pop up on here. I know that actress mostly from playing Barney's mum on How I Met Your Mother, but I'm pretty sure I've seen her pop up in other things as well. So yeah, we're definitely, when we do get around to that show, keep an eye on her. But she sounds like a really, really great character, and it sounds like another show that you know, the premise of which provides like great characterization and opportunity for fun character beats and growth. So that's really fun. Alrighty, so we're at number 34. So my number 34 is from a show that I don't think I've ever really mentioned. So I know it's going to be weird that this character is on here. This was a show that I fell in love with and fell out of love with very quickly because it's a really ridiculous show. It's a Shonda Rhimes show. So she created Grey's Anatomy. So number 34 is the wonderful Melly Grant from Scandal. Now, for anyone who hasn't watched Scandal, it centers around this woman called Olivia Pope, who is a fixer in Washington. So basically she comes in when like the rich and the political and the wealthy, when they have scandals or, you know, they need something covered up or they need a campaign, she comes in and she fixes things. But she's also having an affair with the president of the United States, who might be one of my least favorite characters in existence. And his wife is Melly Grant, the first lady. Now, Melly is played by Bellamy Young, who you've probably seen. She's one of those actresses that kind of pops up everywhere. If you saw her face, I think you'd recognize her. And Melly Grant, I think, is cut from the same cloth as, say, Adele DeWitt and Lila Morgan. She's a tough, fierce brunette who doesn't take any shit. However, her husband is quite possibly the worst husband in the history of TV husbands. And I'm including Don Draper in that, so he's pretty bad. And Melly, unfortunately, she has a lot of struggle in this show because her husband is constantly cheating on her and she's constantly having to deal with Olivia Pope in her business. She tries to leave him half a dozen times but can't because of political reasons. And so she's basically always just trying to do her own thing. But Melly is so savvy. She's so smart. She knows exactly how to manipulate the situation to get what she wants. She knows how to get out from under her husband when she needs to. She's just a really fantastic character. Bellamy Young is so charismatic in the role. I instantly fell in love with Melly. she does this fantastic thing where you can instantly tell when Melly's slipping into her performance mode or when she's being genuine, and she just plays the subtleties between her so well. Melly also gets a really great arc. You know, she does finally get to to leave her god-awful husband. Thank God. She gets, you know, a really fun love interest, and she ends up running for and becoming president of the United States by the end of the series. And the series ends, her ending on the series, big spoiler, but I don't think anyone really wants to watch Scandal. It's a really bad show. But her final ending is her in the Oval Office with the man that she loves standing next to her, and she actually gets a really fantastic ending, which she totally deserved because she really is one of the most abused characters I've ever seen. The way that her husband and Olivia Pope both treat her is ridiculously bad. They also give her this horrible backstory when you find out that her father-in-law attacked her, and she doesn't know whether her son is her husband's or her father-in-law's, and that kind of drove the wedge between her and her husband. So she can't, you know, so she ended up losing her husband for something that was completely out of her control. But Scandal in general is a really messy show. It's real. Like, I tried to rewatch it about 2 months ago or so, and I literally gotten 5 minutes into it and went, why did I even watch this to begin with? And turned it off and went, can't do it. I think it's one of those shows, Shonda Rhimes, I've always thought of Shonda Rhimes shows as really well-written soap operas. So if you're the type of person that gets sucked in by soap operas, and I unfortunately am, you will get sucked into her shows initially, and then you realize that they're really not very good. I think the Bridgerton crowd is kind of working that out at the moment.
Say, yeah.
Yes, but Melly Grant is a fantastic character. I love her so much. I would love to see her, Adele DeWitt, and Lila Morgan just work together because I think those three could totally take over the world. So in a really, really shit show, at least we got a really fantastic character. So number 34, Melly Grant from Scandal.
Shonda Rhimes is the first ever African-American female showrunner.
Yes, and good for her. That is awesome.
Yeah, no,
and
that's
Grey's
great.
Anatomy is now one of the longest running primetime shows or something ever.
Yeah,
so that's
crazy.
fantastic.
Yeah,
but so many of her shows, they're basically elevated soap operas. I mean, How to Get Away with Murder, that show was a shitstorm.
I didn't know that was her,
basically
actually.
the same. Yeah, that's her as well. And now, like I said, now she's doing Bridgerton, which is basically Renaissance soap opera. So, but she does it well. You know, she does soap operas well, so it's easy.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I mean, as long as she knows what she's doing and she's upfront about it and doesn't pretend.
And look at how long Grey's has run. I mean, she's clearly doing something right there.
The buzz for the current season of Bridgerton is very good. I think people seem to think it's the best season so far, but okay, yeah. No. I did watch a bit of Scandal actually when it was airing, and it was well, I quite enjoyed it, but maybe
I did too initially.
I was enjoying it more on the trashy way.
And that's it. If you're gonna watch it, you have to go in expecting trash. You know, this is political soap opera. It's it's ridiculous. Some of it is fun, but it is quite trashy.
Yeah. So in a way, it's the more soapy, trashy version of The West Wing because
that's the best way to put it. Yes, vibe, absolutely.
But I do like Kerry Washington a lot. I think she's really good.
Oh, and she's very good as Olivia Pope. She's very, very good.
And by the way, that guy who plays the president, he always plays assholes. That character.
Yeah, he does. He's an asshole in Ghost, isn't he? And then
that's him. Yeah.
Yeah, and I know there's another one. Although he is the voice of Tarzan, he is the voice of Disney's Tarzan. So
I didn't know that.
There you go.
Okay. Oh, that's funny. Yeah.
Tony Goldwyn. That's
it. That's his name, yeah. 34, and I think this starts a little bit of a run of what I would call kind of sort of legacy characters, but also characters which are massively influential when it comes to TV. And I've mentioned this character before, so I'll keep it short and sweet, but I'm going back to the original Star Trek. It's Mr. Spock, one of the greatest ever TV nerds. There you go. One of the great oddballs, and no one ever played him quite like Leonard Nimoy did. And I just adore the guy. He's such an icon and such a fascinating progressive character for the time. And has wonderful chemistry with all the other characters. Obviously, people talk a lot about his relationship with Kirk and their rapport and how it's an odd couple sort of relationship. And it's a lot of fun to watch, but also people forget about the stuff with McCoy, which is just fantastic, you know, because McCoy is the more kind of down to earth sort of grumpy one who's just constantly put out by some of Spock's antics and like kind of like get with it man sort of thing. So there's a great chemistry between those two as well, and they have some wonderful banter back and forth, and Spock just looking bemused by the human race, basically, you know, not understanding it. You've got the classic eyebrow, you've got the Vulcan death grip, a lot of good campy fun, but also a great character for the time, which has stood the test of time and has influenced so many other characters on TV. And yeah, Leonard Nimoy is a sad loss, obviously, you know, and not only cultivated that character, but went on to write and direct stuff, not only on Star Trek, but also films and other TV, and made a very memorable cameo in Fringe as well, which would have been one of his later roles. So yeah, TV and sci-fi probably wouldn't be the same without this character. So that's Mr. Spock.
Very nice. Well, I'm not a Star Trek fan, but I have seen the movies.
Shame.
If that counts. No, I did like the original, the 2009 movie, and that has a cameo by Nimoy himself. He meets he meets Kirk, and that's a fun scene. And I do like at the end when he's talking to himself, he's like, it may be, you know, redundant to say this, but live long and prosper, he says to himself. So I always like that. And you know, the dynamics that you're talking about, they definitely come through in that original movie, like McCoy in particular, you know, with his you know, constant just like, oh, what are they doing now? What's the Vulcan doing now? And yeah, obviously him and James Kirk are one of the, you know, original bro TPs. So definitely. I mean, you know, obviously everyone knows who Spock is. He's such an iconic character for a reason, and has stood the test of time for so long. And yes, Leonard Nimoy, definitely a legend. So very nice. All right, so the next several characters for me will probably be very quick to go through. When I did this list, I know you said you didn't want to have too many double ups from the same TV show, but unfortunately for me, because characters are what I attach to, I tend to, a lot of my favorite characters will come from the same show, and because these all come from like the same universe, they're all kind of in the same class because they're all written to the same caliber. So I'm basically about to start a streak of Buffyverse characters. So the next several people will be Buffyverse characters for me.
Okay.
But we'll just go through them quickly one by one. So I'm kicking off the Buffyverse characters at number 33 with the Dark Slayer, Faith Lee Hain. Now, Faith was originally my favorite Buffyverse character. She was the Buffy character I related to the most when I was a teenager. Faith was like my go-to. As I've gotten older and I've started to, I've not a 17-year-old mess anymore. I've started to kind of step back a little bit from her character and see her a little bit clearer. I still think she has one of the best arcs in the entirety of the Buffyverse, which is crazy considering she's actually not in that many episodes when you step back and count how many episodes she's in across both shows. But, when she first turns up in Buffy season 3, she's a great foil to Buffy. I love her storyline in season 3, the Dark Slayer storyline. And then, of course, when she comes back in season 4 and then goes over to Angel, which is where she does the majority of her growth, every time she comes back, she is just an absolute delight. Whether she's evil or whether she's good, you can't take your eyes off her. I feel like Eliza Dushku just that role, that was just a perfect marriage. Like, she just brought Faith to life in such a fantastic way, so much charisma. And I just think, by the end of the series, by the end of Buffy, where you see where she's come from and where she's ended up, it's such a complete arc. It's such a good arc. And it just stays so true to her character. I like that when she comes back to Buffy, she's still met with distrust and a little bit of disdain. She kind of has to work, to earn their trust back. She gets some great exchanges. She gets some great lines. I actually really like her scene with Spike. I think that scene's really funny. And it's just and she's got that great line with Principal Wood when he's all like, oh, that's what the First does to you, it finds your Achilles heel. Nah, just talk to me. What, it does a heel thing too? And it's just she's so great. So that's kicking off the Buffyverse characters. Number 33, Faith Lee Hain.
Good stuff. Yeah, no, she's a strong character. Definitely one that makes a massive impact in the Buffyverse across both shows, obviously.
Yes.
So you always need those characters to shake things up. And we've talked about season 3 of Buffy and just how like fascinating her descent to the dark side is. And I remember watching that season for the first time, and they did catch me out. Like, I thought by the end of Amend she was definitely on the good team.
Yes.
Like that scene at the end of Amend convinced me that she was going to be on the good side from then on. And so they did really well in subverting that, I think.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, definitely across both shows she has a really strong arc, which is great to see. And nice that she comes back around to Buffy at the very end to sort of close that off. So my number 3, and I'm sticking to old school here with another older show, and that is one of TV's greatest ever detectives, Lieutenant Frank Columbo. They have
okay.
looking befuddled as always, but don't be fooled. He'll sucker you in. So, like, his tradition of detective, I think, really comes from the classic, you know, sort of gumshoe style detective from like the 40s, 50s noir. But the show and his character puts his own unique spin on it. Obviously, one of the best catchphrases ever, just another thing. Absolutely delightful every time. And yeah, it just reinvented that idea of this guy who is a real nerd who you would underestimate when you see him. Like, if you said he sort of looks a bit quite drunk at times, but like if you said this was the guy who's going to come in and foil this crook's plan and figure out what the case was, who the killer was, who the criminal was, yeah, you would sort of be laughed out of the room at it. And I think Peter Falk, the actor, was so good at that. Like, he almost brought his natural charisma and like likable personality to the role, where part of the gimmick and trick of the character was then he could fool the criminal into believing that he's their friend, really, to get them on side. And he was just so convincing as like, I am a bit of a joke, but then in the next moment he turns it all around and fools them. And always, it's in the tradition of Agatha Christie a little bit, because you'll have him then walk back into the scene and say, yeah, I figured it out, and then explain it to the audience almost. So a little bit of that tradition, but with its own spin as well. And the character is just timeless, because I think he's a great, like, very working class sort of character who can relate to everybody, can relate to everyday people, and is just so smart, but in a way you wouldn't really expect. And I think the way those case of the weeks on Columbo played out was a very different way to how it had played out before on TV. And yeah, those early Columbo episodes, I know the very first one officially was directed by Spielberg. And yeah, so, and that's very early on in Spielberg's career. Very, like, theatre, like, play of the day sort of feel to a lot of the episodes, anyway, that I've seen. But yeah, he's a timeless character. I think a bit like Spock for like sci-fi and kind of aliens on sci-fi. I think he changed the game for what a TV detective could be. And obviously his lines have been quoted so much, and they still get quoted today. So that is Lieutenant Frank Columbo, my number 33.
I'm a strange guy.
Really?
Yeah, I worry. I mean, little things bother me. I'm a worrier. I mean, little insignificant details. I lose my appetite. I can't eat.
You know, there's only one thing that I'm not clear about.
Actually, there is one thing. What other thing?
One more question, sir. About those sacks of gold.
I've never seen the show. I haven't watched as much older TV as you have, but I've definitely heard of it. I mean, I'm pretty sure it was referenced in Gilmore Girls and, you know, a couple of other shows. Would have heard of it. But no, that's a cool pick. I like something different, something a little bit more old school, a little bit more of a classic character. Oh, that's great. Alrighty, so number 32 for me, I'm continuing on my Buffy streak. This is going to be for the next few characters. So number 32 is a Buffy character that I think is severely underrated and gets way too much hate, especially considering she's introduced as a teenage girl, and that is little Dawny Summers. Now, I have a whole essay on my channel, like basically going into why Dawn deserves more love, so I'll keep this brief. But basically, I think that people tend to overlook the fact that she goes through so much trauma at such a young age. She goes through an existential crisis that some of us could not even fathom. I mean, how do you deal with the fact that you're literally only 2.5 months old, that your entire life has been constructed, and that you've only existed for like 2 months? Like, that's insane. Then, you know, she has to deal with her mother dying, her sister dying, her surrogate mother dying. There's so much murder and death and just neglect in her world. She spends all of season 6 basically being ignored by every single adult around her. And I feel for her so much. I do think that the show held her back a little bit from growing. And I'm really glad that in season 7, they allowed her to mature a little bit, and she actually became her own character and came into her own. Unfortunately, as with a lot of the main characters, she did get a bit forgotten about in season 7 once the potentials came in and that storyline took over. But I do think that in season 7, I love seeing her go to high school. I love that in Lessons, she gets her own version of Willow and Xander. I'm so annoyed that they didn't build on that. And I really like that, you know, she wants to be more independent. She wants to be treated more like an adult. And I do think that the show does a good job of like showing Buffy slowly recognizing her as someone who can handle herself and not just her baby sister. Now, when I will admit that when I first watched Buffy and when Dawn first turned up, I didn't like her. I am an older sister. So that scene where Buffy's getting like all her breakfast stuff out and Dawn just comes along and takes it all one by one. Oh my God. As an elder sibling, do I relate to that scene? Or, you know, where she's constantly being pushed on Buffy by Joy. So I totally get that. But over the years, I've just come to think that Dawn is such a resilient character. I think Michelle Trachtenberg plays her so well. I think she's got great chemistry with Buffy. I think she's got really good chemistry with the rest of the gang, and I really like her dynamics with like Tara. I think her dynamic with Tara is so beautiful, and I just think that she is a better character than a lot of people give her credit for. On the one hand, I do understand it. She can be quite bratty and annoying sometimes. But on the other hand, I think that people allow that part of her to overshadow the parts of her that are actually really, really good. And yeah, if you want more details, I have an 18-minute long video talking about why she's so awesome. So that is my number 32, and next in my list of Buffyverse characters, Dawn Summers.
Yeah, no, I can't argue. We've talked about Dawn at length on the season 5, and we did talk about the contrast because I'm obviously a younger sibling, so I was coming at that from a different vibe. But yeah, we both love Dawn and we both defended her and said she's really underrated, and that Michelle Trachtenberg made the role her own. Like you can't see anyone else playing it. And yeah, it's a great essay you did, and I'll post it actually in this video so people can go and check it out. 32 is dinner, Batman. There you go. Nice. So I've sort of gone really from obviously the inception of the character in the comics really up to the super campy but super fun 60s TV show where Adam West played him, and Adam West is so good. Well, so did I. That's why I've included that side, and it always comes down to taste with different Batman, because obviously fans are always going to have their own favorite and their least favorite, and obviously fans of the comics are very strong on what kind of Batman they like. And so I think if you're a fan of the comic, you might not be so enamored by the TV one. But yeah, like you, I grew up watching it. I have fond memories of watching it, probably after school, but definitely in the evening. So it's a lot of fun, and I really love his chemistry and dynamic with Robin on that show as well. But yeah, I say it unashamedly, really, Adam West is one of the best Batman ever, and that show was just so fun, just so colourful and so like cheesy and silly, but so much fun. like the use of color in that show. But Adam West is one of the best Batman. But then, of course, as well as Adam West and the 60s Batman, I'm also going to include Batman the Animated Series. That Batman, but voiced so well by Kevin Conway, who we lost quite recently. So that's another sad loss. But Batman the Animated Series, one of the best versions of Batman on screen, small, big screen. Yeah, it just showed what you can do with classic animation, and just having all those episodes, really, like 22-minute episodes at a time, and just brought out the whole array of like the villains that you had in Gotham City, and just did many different things with the character, because you had the amount of time, you had enough episodes to play with different sides of Batman and show different things. And I like the contrast really there, how West's Batman I think is iconic and a classic, but very different to this Batman. And obviously with this being animation, it's a very different show than that version. But yeah, I highly recommend Batman the Animated Series as well. And I think Kevin Conway's voice is such a good staple. And 60s Batman followed by the 90s Batman, two very different Batmen, but both great, and showed like the different sides of the characters. So that's Batman.
Very cool. Well, like I said, I loved the 60s one when I was a kid, because they used to show reruns on TV. So I'd come home from school and watch that. I haven't watched the animated series yet, but it is on my to watch list, because Tim and I are currently working our way through X-Men, and we decided after X-Men we want to do some more animated series. So we said Batman, because we've both been wanting to watch the animated series for a while. So I definitely will get on that. And don't worry about being controversial when it comes to Batman. My favorite Batman is Ben Affleck, and you want to be controversial, so there you go. As a character, I don't think that you quite share my love for this character. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that you're not as up on this character as I am. But number 31 is another character that I do think is underrated, and this one I think definitely gets way too much hate, and that is good old Alexander Lavelle Harris from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Look, I know that Xander's problematic, okay? Like, definitely he's got some issues. But I also think that, considering we've got characters like Wesley and Spike, who both are so much worse than Xander, and yet Xander gets, like, so much crap, like he is, like, the be-all and end-all ultimate nice guy Chad, everyone seems to think that Xander is, like, this awful, horrible human being who forced Buffy to, like, be friends with him so we could get in her pants, which is just such bullshit. Look, Xander's definitely problematic. He's definitely got his flaws. He's sexist. He's got an issue with strong women. I think he's got Joss Whedon's issue with strong women.
You're really on your soapbox tonight, aren't you?
I am. Look, let me talk about why I love Xander. He is, in my opinion, an unspoken quiet hero. He is the guy that does the behind-the-scenes stuff while everyone is busy doing the big stuff. He's the one that brings Buffy back from the edge when she needs it. He's the one that gives her the pep talks. He's the one that goes down into the basement with a bomb while the rest of them are fighting the Hellmouth demon. I think Xander has a real inner strength that probably comes from the fact that he has a very bad home life, which is something that's not often talked about on the show or in the fandom. But there are so many hints that Xander's home life is abusive and violent and not a great place to grow up in. And given that environment, I think he actually turned out quite well. I think he's actually a really good friend. I love how protective he is of Willow, and I love that his protection of Willow comes above everything. We've both talked about how much we love the line in When She Was Bad, when he says, "If they hurt Willow, I will kill you," because it just really shows, he will put everything aside to protect Willow. And I think that he really does become the heart of the group. He becomes, that central figure in the group who you don't necessarily see as being that important, but if you lost him, you would feel like that hole in the group. And I think in the later seasons in particular, he has a lot of growth. I think season 7, he does not get enough credit for how many times he patches up the Summers house. I know it's a small thing, but that house basically stays in one piece because of Xander. And I just think he gets a lot of growth. I think he has one of like if you look at Xander in season 1 and then you look at him in season 7, he is a completely different character, almost unrecognizable. Now, I know Nick Brendan in his personal life has a lot of crap, but I do think that with the character of Xander as an actor, he did a very good job. And I think that he brought the character to life in a really good way. And he's got good comic timing, and he's able to do the more serious scenes as well as the funnier scenes. And I think I've become such a Xander defender because so many people hate him, and I just don't think that it's warranted. So that's my 31. Probably a bit of an unpopular opinion because I know he's an unpopular character, but I love Xander Harris from Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Like, I don't think I love his character as much as you, but I think I'm definitely a defender as well. I think that the hate is extreme and at times unwarranted, and like it's a coming of age show, and the guy is finding his feet in the world.
Yes.
And, like, he does screw up a lot, but I think he also makes up for it a lot of times. Like, when he comes through, he really comes through, and it does show you what a good friend he is to Buffy and Willow at times. And I think when I first watched the show, he was actually the character I related most to and the character I enjoyed the most, maybe. As time has gone on, I think there's others who I've enjoyed more, but I'm still a big Xander fan. He has some of the best dialogue of the show.
Yeah, he does.
And Nicholas Brendan plays him so well. The later seasons, you really see the maturity of him as well. They've gone for, again, I'm jumping back forward this time, so a more recent show and character. And that is Elizabeth Jennings from The Americans. So the Kerry Russell character, who, I think is a wonderful, like, really tough, controversial, like, female on TV. So The Americans is like a twist on the Cold War spy show. So her and Matthew Rhys plays, well, they're a married couple. They're Russians, but they've been living in America for a long time now, undercover. So they're in like a suburban neighborhood. And it follows the day-to-day operations during the Cold War of the Soviets and their various missions as spies and how they have to assume different identities and make different contacts. But at the same time, as part of the cover, they've got their children that they've brought into the world, who at the start of the show at least don't know anything about their like secret lives, their secret identity. And you also get like the FBI perspective with characters there and stuff. But Kerry Russell, who is one of those actors who never puts in a bad performance, like she's always even in stuff that isn't that good, she always puts in a very watchable performance. But this in some ways was a coming out performance, like, because her character in this is so sort of gritty and so tough and so like versatile. She balances a lot of different stuff, but one of the great things about The Americans is the way it does flip like the gender dynamic on its head, because in many ways the Matthew Rhys character Philip is the more gentle character in the show, and I think it partly comes from the fact that it sets up early that he is the one who has adapted more to American life and has embraced it, and he's the one who, as the show goes on, starts saying, would it really be a bad thing if we retire and we actually live in America all the time? And whereas she has a particular like allegiance to Russia and like is very much on that side, and it makes for like a better character as a result, and they have great chemistry, a great dynamic. And Kerry Russell just gets to do so much as Elizabeth, so many different looks, so many different like missions. There's some great action scenes in the show, which she does very well. She's very convincing in that scene, in those scenes. So she's very tough. She manages to be very manipulative at times, very cold at times, quite clinical, like, this is the job, I'm going to get on and do it no matter what, no matter how underhanded and like kind of like, I don't know, just kind of messed up some of the things are. Like, in some ways, if it's for the mission, there's almost like no line that she won't cross in many ways. But there's layers to the character as well because of the stuff at home. And, you know, you do slowly see in certain scenes the mask kind of come off and that she is a human as well. But yeah, she plays it so well. I think she has a great arc. I really love some of the stuff with Paige, her and Paige, that's the teenage daughter of the family, and Paige herself has a really interesting arc because she is like the older of like the siblings. So she is the one who, the issue of, should we tell her, should we bring her into this world and introduce her to, this is what we do, that becomes a big issue in the show. And yeah, you see that with like her and the Kerry Russell character Elizabeth. You see that, then she is extra harsh on Paige than she is with the other kid, with the brother. So they have some great scenes together, but it's one of my favorite modern shows. I've talked about it before, and it might be one of my favorite shows, full stop. But her character is so good, and it's just great to see an actress as good as Kerry Russell get 6 seasons to just show the full range and just play with it so much. So yeah, a really progressive character, I think. A character you don't see that often get to be that kind of nasty and out there in that kind of show. Like, she gets to be so many things. So that is Elizabeth Jennings from The Americans.
Nice. Definitely a show I'm going to watch at some point. I did start to watch the pilot, but then I got held up. There was an assault scene that no one had warned me about, and I kind of went, oh, okay. But now that I know about it, because it looks like a very good show. Everything I've read about it has said that it's really fantastic. I do like Kerry Russell, liked her since the Felicity days. Hopefully she didn't cut her hair during the filming of this show. And yeah, no, she is always good, even in bad things. Like when you said bad stuff, I remember she was in that Adam Sandler movie, Bedtime Stories. She was good in it. The rest of the movie was crap. She has a fun little cameo in Scrubs, actually. She's in 2 episodes of Scrubs, and her character is fun in that. But yeah, no, I always like Kerry Russell, and it definitely sounds like an interesting show. And I remember when I found out the premise for that show, and I went and I researched, and I was like, oh my god, this actually happened apparently during the Cold War. Like, this is based on a real thing that happened. It's crazy. It's crazy to think of that, like sleeper agents. All right, guys, we're still going on the Buffy run. I've only got 3 more to go, so stay with me for now. So coming in at number 30 is, it's the titular character herself, Miss Buffy Summers, because, I mean, of course, what's interesting is, because I've been watching Buffy since I was 16 years old. It's been a show that has been with me for so many years. And when I was younger, I didn't particularly like Buffy. I think it was a personality thing. I think because, we were both the same age, so I was viewing her more as a peer. Now that I'm older and I'm viewing her as a younger person with so much on her shoulders, the last rewatch we did, the one that we're currently in the middle of, that really made me fall in love with the character. I mean, we all know Buffy Summers. She's fantastic. She's peppy and she's fun and she really takes on her responsibility. She seriously, she's got so much on her shoulders, and she just keeps going. There's so much hurt and tragedy in her life. There's so much pain. There's just so much that she has to overcome. And every season she has her own arc and her own storyline that really helps her grow. We just did the most recent season we did was season 5, and I think I gave her MVP for that one because she is so good in that season. Everything she's having to deal with her mum and her sister and the Key and Glory. Sarah in that role is obviously fantastic. She gives gives everything to that role. She really makes Buffy herself her own. I mean, we've talked about this. We both have a bit of a soft spot for Christy Swanson in the movie. She obviously she is fun, but Sarah is the ultimate Buffy. And she's just so good. She brings so much heart to that role. She's such a great role model. She stands for so much, like female empowerment. I know that Buffy as a whole has been tainted because of Joss, but in general, that accidental message that got in, it still works. It's still a great message, and Buffy is still a great character. I do think the final 2 seasons put her through the ringer way too much. When we do eventually watch season 6, I'm basically going to spend the whole time going, why do we hate Buffy Summers? Why are we putting Buffy Summers in so much pain? But she's a great character. And anyone who's watching Keith's channel obviously is a Buffy fan because he talks about it a lot. So you guys will all know there's not much else to say. Buffy Summers is fantastic. So she's coming in at number 30, titular character from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. It's really all you need to say.
Okay, so it'll be interesting now because I would have thought she would have been a bit higher than 30, actually.
Well, the thing is, because we're including other TV characters, there are a lot more other. Like, if we were just doing Buffyverse characters, she might be higher. But just there's so many other great TV characters out there.
Yeah, well, it'll be interesting then to see what's above her. But yeah, obviously, I'm not going to argue with that. So my number 30 is a very different kind of female character from the last one, and she is, I think, the newest character on my list, and that is a character I just adore, Misty Quickly from Yellow Jackets. The role which has reinvented Christina Ricci's career so well and just captured the imagination from the start and just reminded us why she is such a good actress. Yeah, because she, in many ways, I think there's a lot of good characters on Yellow Jackets, and I think the cast are just wonderful. But instantly, really, when from the first moment she appears, she just grabs you, really, and that's in the past and the present, because the teenage Misty is really well cast as well, and that actress does a great job in capturing the essence of the character. But yeah, no, she is really such an unpredictable and fun character, a classic anti-hero in many ways, but an anti-hero who at times you wonder like how she gets by, how she functions, because she is just so eccentric and quirky, and at times seems to be her worst enemy. But I think the beautiful thing about Misty Quickly is then there is like a method to her madness, and Christina Ricci plays it just so well. I love the dynamic between her and Nat in season 1, particularly when they're going on like the whole road trip. And they have a love to hate you type dynamic, and just the way she consistently pushes Nat's buttons but doesn't even realize she's doing it, and watching the kind of fallout from that is always really fun. But they have a nice sort of bond, and I think Misty just represents the sort of character who you get in real life, who hangs around like groups. And one of her big thing is, and this includes in the past, because one of the big like cliffhangers at the end of one of the episodes is that she destroys the radio from like the aeroplane, and that's really out there. That's really like on the edge of character unfold, and some of the mania, some of the obsession, some of like the desperation just to be accepted, just to fit in. And I think that's what makes the character so intriguing, is that she does all this and goes to these extremes almost to fit in. But because it's Christina Ricci playing her, because there is a lightness of touch to the character to go along with the psycho, in the character, I think that's what makes it work as well. And she's got these quirky little touches, her being into musicals, there's a lot of fun with that, her being into like true crime podcasts, that's obviously a massive
Citizen Detective.
Yeah. Just underestimate that character at your peril, really. Like there's a lot of different sides to her, a lot of fun, and she goes on a great arc. And I think she just naturally fits into the group so well, and I think she's just one of the great kind of like anti-heroes, as I said on TV, but like there's a method to her madness which is great as well. So Misty Quickly is my number 30. I think when you look at Christina Ricci and her career, I think this is going to go down as one of her most fun character. And such an unexpected character. She has chemistry with all the characters on the show, all the cast members. And I'm going to make a prediction now, because I know it didn't happen in the last round of award seasons, but I'm going to make a prediction before the end of Yellow Jackets. I think she will win an Emmy for the role.
Hopefully she does. She's very good.
That would be great, yeah, because she really deserves it. She's so good in that show. So yeah, that's Misty Quickly.
That's a great pick. Oh, well, I'm not quite as enamored with Yellow Jackets, but she was one of the characters that I did absolutely love. I've spoken about this before, but that scene where she kidnaps the journalist and she's playing the Phantom of the Opera, like that is just brilliant. That is so good. And I also love that scene where she's spying on Nat in the motel, and she sees that Nat's bought cocaine, and so she bursts into the hotel and like sniffs up the cocaine before Nat can take
that's
it.
wonderful.
And then she's like, "Whoa, no, don't take it, don't do it." And she's like, "Whoa, are your eyes ringing? Is this supposed to happen?" It's like, "Yeah, Misty, you just did a line of cocaine. Of course you're going to be having side effects." But no, you're right. Christina Ricci is so good in that role. And the younger version is really good as well. And she was one of the only characters that I really found quite funny and endearing. So that's a great choice.
Okay.
All right, Buffy fans, stick with me. We've only got 2 to go for now, in this run anyway. So coming in at 29 is a Buffy character who went from the original show to the sister show Angel, and that is the wonderful Queen Cordelia Chase.
Very good.
I love Cordy. We spoke about this as we've been doing our Buffy watch, but she actually gets more growth on Buffy than a lot of people give her credit for. Obviously, she's brought in, she's Buffy's first mirror. You know, she's who Buffy used to be. And we actually get quite a few references to that over the high school years, that Cordelia is kind of one of Buffy's shadow selves, which I think is really interesting. But we also see Cordelia, as soon as she finds out about the supernatural, she kind of can't help herself. She keeps gravitating back to the Scoobies. It's like she's just got this urge to help. And I've talked about this before, but in Homecoming, she asks Buffy, she says, "Why do you even want to be Homecoming Queen? You already have all of this," kind of indicating that she believes that what Buffy is doing is worthwhile and should bring her meaning. So I think that's a really interesting angle. Obviously, Charisma Carpenter is perfectly cast. I mean, aside from the fact that no one's buying her as a 16-year-old in season 1, she's absolutely fantastic. She's got that snark, she's got that kind of edge that really makes Cordy fun to watch, but she also can do the smaller scenes. Like, there are quite a few scenes over the first few seasons of Buffy, you know, where they ask Cordelia, you know, like when in Helpless, when Buffy's like, "Cordelia, will you drive me home?" And she's like, "Of course." Or, you know, that moment in Helpless where Buffy tries to like save her for some guy, the guy pushes Buffy and then Cordy starts like, you know, hitting him. She's like, "What the hell is wrong with you?" And she starts like hitting really him. Good. And then when she moves over to Angel, she gets so much more growth. Angel has such a great habit of taking characters on Buffy that were maybe not that fleshed out, Angel, Wesley, Cordelia, and turning them into these amazing 3-dimensional characters. Now, of course, with Cordelia, her character legacy has been tainted. Obviously, we all know that there was bad behind-the-scenes stuff, which obviously affected her character in the later half of season 3 and season 4. And unfortunately, it does suck that has been tainted and that Charisma herself was treated so badly behind the scenes. But Cordy as a character, you know, for 5 seasons, 3 seasons of Buffy and 2 seasons of Angel, she had a great trajectory. She had great dynamics. I think her and Xander are one of my underrated kind of OTPs. I loved her and Xander. I thought they were such a fun couple. And I always thought that they could have been really good together as grown-ups once they'd both matured a little bit and grown past the high school stage. Her and Angel and Wes are obviously such a great team. She's got such great chemistry. Well, friendship-wise with David, let's not make it romantic because that did not work.
I agree.
Yeah, that was just not good. We'll get there at some point. But yeah, just Courtney in general, she's a great character. Very, very layered. You know, again, like I said, she does start out, you think she's just your typical mean girl, but you just start to unpeel the layers to her and see that she's actually quite a deep character. I do like that she can come across as quite vapid and airheaded, but then it turns out, no, she's actually really smart. She's smart in her own way. You just kind of have to get used to her way of thinking. And I think that she functions on Angel, at least initially, as the heart of the team, kind of the way Xander did. She's what keeps Angel grounded. She actually keeps Angel very tied to his humanity because she refuses to let him wallow in his vampire side. You know, she does not put up with any of Angel's broody crap. She's just like, get over it. You're a vampire. We're a human. We're going to deal with it. And she's just, yeah, she's a fantastic character. So number 29, Queen C, Cordelia Chase.
Yeah, that's a very good choice. Can't argue. I'm a big fan, always have been. So yeah, I can't argue with that. And definitely as the list goes on, there'll be some Buffyverse characters from me. So my number 29 now. It's a character which I'm guessing you'll have at some point, but a character you'll probably have much higher. And that is the bad boy himself, Don Draper from Mad Men, played by John Hamm. And we've talked about this show and this character before, but no one else can really play him quite like John Hamm does. Such a flawed, such a frustrating man, but also a man with a lot of depth and a lot of growth over the course of the show. At times his worst enemies, but there is a humanity lurking beneath the facade, and occasionally it does come out, and it's beautiful to watch when it does come out. He is just the picture of what that show is, you know, the 1960s, like masculinity and the idea of advertising kind of masking, you know, something a lot darker, a lot more seedy. And John Hamm just plays him so well and goes on a great arc really from the start of the show. There's a lot of fascinating developments with his family life. There's a great complex relationship with Peggy, who starts off as pretty much his secretary, so his number two, and has to go through all the typical hurdles that females did back in the 60s. But gradually over the course of the show, she does get more power, more responsibility. And Don, although begrudgingly at times, does facilitate some of that. And they have a really great and complex relationship where he sort of does, take her on almost as a student type thing and gives her tips. And it's a great relationship because really there's never any suggestion that there's going to be a romance, and then that's something I like a lot, because obviously with a lot of women in his life, that's the way he goes, because he is a bit of a womanizer, and it's
a little bit
just a tad, and it is capturing that side of 60s like culture and the gender divide. So it's actually a really smart choice, and a lot of other shows I think would be tempted to make it a romantic relationship. So it's actually a really smart choice. Then there's never any danger of it going down that road, and it makes the dynamic and the bond between the two characters even more better to watch. So yeah, Don Draper, again, I talk a lot about anti-heroes, but I think he is a great anti-hero on TV. There's a lot of complexities to him, and in many ways he is the heart and soul of the show, because he just sums up so much of what the show is and the world it's depicting. So Don Draper from Mad Men is my number 29.
Nice. Well, we know I approve of that, although I would have liked to see him a little bit higher, but we'll see who comes in ahead of him. I won't say anything, and we'll see if or when he turns up on my list. But I obviously 100% approve of that choice, because yes, Don Draper, so good. And John Hamm, again, another one of those marriages of character and actor that you could not imagine anyone else doing a better job. He's so good in that role. So good. All right, lovely Buffyverse people. We are at the last of the Buffyverse characters. for now. We'll see if any pop up later. But for this streak, we're finally ending it at number 28 with one of my favorite vampires of all time, the wonderful Darla, played by the beautiful Julie Benz. God, she's so gorgeous. I love a vampire character. Vampires, obviously, because of their nature and what they are, they open up a lot of doors for exploration of existentialism and character and what it means to be alive, but not really alive. Death, what does death mean? And I think that Darla's arc on Angel, now, obviously, she started as a very bubblegummy character. When you watch Darla in season 1 of Buffy, it's like, who is that? Like, Darla with guns? What? Darla being all simpery and like, it just doesn't work. But when she's brought back an Angel, her season 2 arc of Angel is so good. I love the fact that Wolfram and Hart bring her back as human and that she has to figure out what that means. Like at first she tries to act like her old vampire self, but you see that her soul is slowly starting to affect her. She obviously doesn't have her, like she's got more freedoms now as a human. She can walk in the sunlight. There's even a part where she taunts Angel about not being able to go into the sun and all of that. But then of course they bring her back in her dying human body, so then she has to deal with her own mortality, and you have Angel trying to help her. She wants him to turn him, then she doesn't, then she goes through the struggle, then she accepts it, and then of course we get one of my favorite surprise moments in the Buffyverse. And when I first watched this episode, I had no spoilers. So when Drusilla walks through that door, it was just like, oh my God. And then, of course, she's turned again and she becomes a vampire again. And then we have her and Drusilla, who are just, I really wish they'd done more with those two and with that particular storyline. And I think we've talked about this before. There was this great build-up, then we get the fire, and then nothing. It's like they just, it's like they ran out of steam. And we do at least get a couple more episodes with Darla. And then I love her season 3 arc. Look, in retrospect and looking at the fact that both Cordy and Fred died from mystical pregnancies, Darla's pregnancy does have a little bit of to it. But I think if you just look at it by itself, it's a great storyline for Darla. Like I said, because we've got that kind of taintedness from everything that happened on the Angel set. But I think Darla's pregnancy, because I've always said this about vampires, there is only one true path to redemption for vampires, and that's their children. And I've seen this in other vampire stories as well. And Darla gets to do that. She gets to do the one good thing in her life that she can do, which is give her life for her child. And I think that is such a beautiful end to her character, to this vampire who reigned terror for 400 years, ends her life by giving it for her son. And I think that's a beautiful ending to her arc, tainted a little bit by some of the other stuff that happens on the show, but for Darla, it's fantastic. Like I said, Julie Benz, she just has so much fun with that character. She is making her wicked and sexy and fun and snarky. She and Angel have amazing chemistry. Like Darla and Angel as a couple, I actually have a whole video on the complexities of their relationship because there are so many layers to it, and that obviously elevates the character as well. And I just think she is so much fun. She used to be higher on my favorite character lists, but other characters have since kind of taken over. But she still makes, what will she make? She makes top 30, so there you go. So that's number 28, the wonderful Darla from Angel, and that's Buffyverse characters over for now.
For now, yeah. Oh, that's great. No, she's a great character and so well played. And I think I agree with you. I think that is a great end to her arc, the way she goes out. And obviously she does make an appearance in a flashback or two after that. But as an end to her arc over the course of the Buffyverse, particularly on Angel, that is a great end to her arc, I think. So we'll talk about it quite soon because we're going to get to Angel quite soon. So there you go. Yeah, definitely on board with that. So my next pick comes from a UK show and a UK cop show. So I've gone with quite a colourful and memorable character from Line of Duty, and that is DCI Hastings, played by the Irish actor Adrian Dunbar. Now, I know you know of the show.
Yes,
but
I do.
You haven't seen it yet, so
I've seen bits of it through Gogglebox.
Yeah, well, that's true. Yeah, it's a favourite on Gogglebox.
Yep.
So it's all about police corruption, and it has a particular format. Like each episode in each season, and you get a different arc. But it's one of those shows actually for a UK show which you don't think of being like an overreaching like arc and like that serialized sometimes, where it does, because like ultimately there's a character who's behind all this corruption and behind the scenes, which referred to as H, and
Yes,
like,
I've heard of H.
yeah,
Yes.
gradually at the very end, like that person does get revealed. So they do a good job actually of making each season feel standalone, but also like having this overreaching kind of arc and mystery behind who H is as well. And as the seasons go on, linking stuff back into earlier season, which they do very well. But yeah, Adrian Dunbar, his character DCI Hastings, he is the boss of this group of cops who investigate corruptions, and he's one of the most memorable and likable, colourful TV like police bosses. He has a certain phrase about him, a certain tone. You know, that he whips out the phrases Mary, Mother of God, things like that. He's just so entertaining at looking very frustrated and put out with like various characters and some of the back and forth. But most importantly, he's a character you take seriously. He's not really a joke of a character, even though there's a lot of times where you do laugh at his frustration and some of his dialogue. But you do believe this is a seasoned police officer who has a lot of experience, a lot of knowledge to offer. And although he's very blunt and honest with his team if he feels they're screwing up and things like that, he's also a very caring, nurturing figure as well, and he fosters like a good environment. But because he is in every series of the show, he gets a very strong arc where you dip more into his personal life. You see more of maybe some of how he's gone, kind of how he's fallen by the wayside, he struggles to get out of, and how that could come back and haunt him, how that could reflect upon him, how certain other characters could use that against him. But yeah, no, he's one of the great, I think, TV kind of police bosses, if you like. The actor's very good. He's got a lot of charisma, but you just believe him as like this really hardened, seasoned sort of like veteran who's very opinionated, very colourful, but like has his likable moments. He's very humane with it as well, and it's almost like a family, you know, his sort of team really, and a lot of evolution to the character. So he's always great to watch. I think from the regular cast, they have a lot of great guest stars on that show, because like people like Keeley Halls, Kelly MacDonald, they've been on Line of Duty, so they have a lot of great guest stars. But I think from the regular cast, he is definitely one of the best actors, and yeah, it wouldn't quite be the show without him, because one of the big things about Line of Duty and the gimmick of it is the interrogation scenes, the interview scenes, that just become such a big part of the show, and they just make them really gripping and engrossing to watch, and all the little details and the twists and turns, the way they're worked in. And he's a big part of that, because he always tends to be in those scenes. So yeah, that's my number 28. So a little bit of an underrated pick maybe, but that's DCI Hastings from Line of Duty.
I like it. You know, thanks to Gogglebox, I do know about Line of Duty, and I also know who H is. I have no idea who he is within the context of the show, but I know who he is. But no, I when I was watching it through Gogglebox, I was actually thinking this does look interesting. So I might have to check it out at some point. And the character definitely sounds very interesting. So I like it. I like that you've gone for a bit of homegrown TV. That's nice. Alrighty, so we're getting towards the end of this round. So I'm at number 27. Coming at number 28 27 for me is another vampire character, but this is a vampire not from the Buffyverse. This is a vampire from the Vampire Diaries verse, and that is Klaus Michelson, who was one of the original vampires. And if I'm putting him as my favorite character, it's technically Klaus from the originals. He is in the Vampire Diaries, and he's good in the Vampire Diaries, but they spun off the Michelsons to their own show, which was the originals, and I much prefer that show. So Klaus Michelson is one of the original vampires. So in the Vampire Diaries universe, vampires were created 1,000 years ago by a witch who turned her family into vampires, her children, I mean, they were all adult children, but her children into vampires, so that they would be protected against the werewolves who attacked one of her children and killed them. So vampirism was actually a form of protection. However, the way that they were turned into vampires was horribly traumatizing, and Klaus found out once he became a vampire that he was also a werewolf and that he actually wasn't his father's son. And his father, Michael, who is just the worst, is one of the most abusive fathers I've ever come across on TV. And Klaus, unfortunately, gets the brunt of it. Now, Klaus Michelson becomes one of the most arrogant, jerky, kind of I don't care about anyone else kind of vampires, but he's also an OG vampire, and he's also the hybrid, the vampire werewolf hybrid. So he's kind of got a reason to be that arrogant. And on his show, we get a great dive into his character. So they do a pregnancy. A werewolf girl gets pregnant with Klaus's child. And it's about him trying to work out his family, work out all of his family dynamics. And Klaus is just one of those characters that he is just so much fun. Because he just doesn't give a crap. He doesn't give a crap about anyone. He's 1,000 years old. He's stronger than everyone else. He doesn't need to worry about anyone else. And the originals really plays with that idea. Who can beat Klaus? Who is strong enough to beat Klaus? Is there anyone strong enough to take him down? There's a fantastic scene in season 1 where his old protege tries to take him on with I think it's like 36 vampires try to take Klaus on, and they try to tie him up and they try to take him down. And then there's just this moment where you see the hybrid switch flick, and then he just slaughters all of them. And it's just so much fun to see this one vampire just take down everyone. He also gets not really redemption, but he gets to grow due to his relationship with his daughter. Again, vampires and their offspring. It's a great through line. He also gets some great enemies, and he has a very complex relationship with pretty much every single one of his siblings. And the show really explores that and explores his dynamic with his siblings, why he's so untrusting, why he's always after power. And Joseph Morgan, who plays the role, is having so much fun. Like, you can just tell that he loves playing this role, and he's just having the time of his life with it. So Klaus on the Vampire Diaries is basically a villain, and he's a very, very good villain. But when they move him onto the originals and he becomes more of an anti-villain, or maybe even an anti-hero, he becomes so much more interesting. The Vampire Diaries is a show that I wouldn't highly recommend because it is a bit of a teen CW drama, but you can watch the originals without watching the Vampire Diaries, and I would highly recommend the originals to anyone because the originals is more about family, and I like vampire families more than I like vampire romance. So for me, it really scratches that itch, and Klaus is just the best of the best, and I absolutely just love his character. So I just, I think at some point we should do the originals. I think that there are aspects to the show that you'd really enjoy. It's a little bit cheesy in places. It is a CW show, so you do have to take that in stride. But the lore is really fun, and it's set in New Orleans, so they have a lot of fun with the voodoo magic and the witches and all of that, and that's really fun. But yeah, Klaus is definitely, he carries the show, and he's freaking fantastic. So that's my number 27, Klaus Michelson from the originals.
Okay, good stuff. So my number 27, character from a show which has just been rebooted, actually, and it's one of the many personas played by Tatiana Maslany on Orphan Black, the original Orphan Black, and it's hard to choose between them.
I was going to say, which character are you going for? Okay, yeah.
The really creepy,
the
scary,
crazy one.
off the wall Ukrainian chick with the bleach blonde hair, very distinct look, and wonderfully entertaining, but really off the wall character. but again, the performance is so good, it grounds her. Like, it makes you care about her at various times, even though her actions make it hard for you to really care about her. Like, obviously, Tatiana Maslany, it's one of my favorite performances ever on TV, because she does so well to balance basically 5 or 6 different versions of herself, and they're all completely different. She does it so well. But yeah, I think I went for Elena just because she is a little bit of a wild card, a little bit of an anti-hero, so they always appeal to me. She had some great action scenes. She has some very cute sort of scenes where you can tell she is actually trying to fit in with the others and actually be more of a good guy, but she is like wildly unpredictable, and it leads to some fun like twists and turns and unexpected character beats with her. But she's also very vulnerable, like the way Maslany plays her as well. Like, you really do feel for her, like almost she is the most naive of the characters. And just to sum up kind of her personality and just kind of how crazy and wacky the character is. I mean, there's this whole sequence in, I think it's season 2, but it's when she's being held captive by someone, and she's basically in like a box, and she has this whole thing with like I think it's a beetle, but it's some sort of bug like that, and it's like crawling near her. And the way it's played is that it could be in her head, but the whole context is then in her mind she's having a conversation with this
dear
bug, and the bug is talking back to her, and that just really gives you a good snapshot at the character's like personality and just how off kilter her mindset is and how she experiences the world. But yeah, she's wonderful. A great character, as are all the characters, really. Maslany does a great job playing all of them and balancing the various different sides. So, yeah, I've gone for Elena from the original Orphan Black.
I haven't watched Orphan Black. I will check it out at some point. I think I did try the pilot once, and I kind of just wasn't in the right mood for it, and it didn't quite click. But as with a lot of shows, I saw a lot of it on Tumblr, and I do remember that particular character, because every time she popped up, I'm like, oh, this chick is like crazy. And she definitely looked like the most dynamic, though, of the bunch. All of the characters look really interesting. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see what the reboot does. I mean, they've got a good lead. Kristen Ritter is a very good actress, so it'll be interesting to see what they decide to do. I'm assuming you're going to check it out.
Yeah, well, I won't say anything because there's a review of the pilot at least on the way. So
cool.
I won't say anything.
Nice. But no, that's definitely one that I will get around to checking out at some point. And I've heard nothing but praise. Like, that lead actress, it seems like she did such an amazing job playing every single one of those different clones. And it's a hard thing to do, you know, to play that many different characters in one series, having to slip in between. And I saw this one scene where they're all dancing together, and every single one of them has like a different dance, and it's so good. But no, that's a great choice. All right, well, we've arrived at the last ones for this session. It's been an interesting journey. So my number 26, we are going back to the Whedonverse, but not to the Buffyverse. My number 26 is Special Federal Agent Paul Ballard from Dollhouse. Now, I love Paul. I think that he is kind of the very definition of idiot hero. He wants to be the good guy, but he kind of just keeps running in without thought. That being said, I think that Paul gets underestimated and overlooked both in the show and in the fandom. A lot of fans, I think, see him as like this creepy guy who's like just obsessed with Echo. But when you watch the show, like, his obsession with Echo didn't come from him. People keep sending her to him. Like, you know, Alpha sends him the photo, then the dollhouse sends her, then someone else sends her. And it's like, what's the Paul guy supposed to do? And what I really love about Paul is he really is the only character in the show who never, ever sees the dollhouse as anything but insidious. Almost every other character tries to rationalize the dollhouse or tries to, you know, say the dollhouse is not what it is or the dollhouse does good. But Paul always sees the dollhouse for what it is, and his goal is always to take it down. I think that Tamo Pennicott does a really good job with the character. I think that he really gets his frustration and his, the way that he's always like just banging his head against the wall, trying to get into the dollhouse, trying to find out its secrets. I think he's got a good dynamic with most of the cast. Unfortunately, I don't think he has the best dynamic with Eliza, which is really odd because Eliza usually has chemistry with anyone that she stands next to, but for some reason, I don't know, for me it didn't work. But I do really like when he goes into the dollhouse. I love his dynamic with Adele DeWitt because neither of them trust each other, and yet they are both very similar people. So I think there's like a really fun dynamic to be had there. And I really like when he goes into the dollhouse in season 2 and he's trying to like kind of help take it down from the inside. I feel a lot for Paul. He's a very isolated character. He's been ostracized at work because he's become obsessed with the dollhouse. He doesn't seem to have many friends. His neighbor Melly, well, I won't give any spoilers, but let's just say that doesn't particularly work out very well. And, he gets a lot of hard knocks, but he's a genuinely good guy. And I think that's one thing that I really love about Paul is he just wants to do the right thing. He wants to bring down the dollhouse because he knows that it's hurting people. He knows that it's human trafficking, and he knows that it's not right, that it's continuing to function. And I really like seeing him in the epitaphs as well, and how he's become a hardened fighter, and where he's standing, where he and Echo standing, they've kind of become the face of the resistance. So I think Paul is a very overlooked character, and I think if Dollhouse had gone for longer, there could have been a lot more development with him and a lot more about like his background and what drove him to the dollhouse in the first place. And I just think he's really, really interesting, and I've always had a bit of a soft spot for him. And I think, again, one of the reasons I have a soft spot for him is because he is so hated upon in the Dollhouse fandom, which is not a huge fandom, mind you, but they still don't seem to like him very much. But I think that he's a great character. I think he works great as kicking against the Dollhouse. He gives them that antagonist to work with. And I think that his personal journey is really, really fun and really, really interesting. And there are a lot of twists and turns of this character that you maybe don't see coming and work out really well in the end. So, yeah. For number 26 for me, the final in today's list is good old Paul Ballard from Dollhouse.
Yeah, that's a good shout and a good defense of his character, and we'll definitely do Dollhouse one day. We're gonna do that as part of our Whedonverse sort of show runs. So yeah, good stuff. So my number 26, I've gone for a sitcom character. I've gone for a character from Frasier, and I've gone for Frasier's younger brother, Niles Crane, played by David Hyde Pierce. Oh, I love a good TV nerd, and that's what he is. I love a character who doesn't realize that he's dorky. Obviously, the Crane brothers are very much into high culture, high art, and things like that. But a lot of times, like, Niles is the kind of the butt of the jokes in many ways. He's, often he's trying so hard to like put himself out there and to come across as like someone who's so sophisticated and falls flat on his face. But there's also a gentle side to Niles, behind the fact that he's like quite rich, quite, sort of middle upper class. I think there's a lot of humanity to him as well, like a real gentle side, and actually the sort of guy you could imagine going for a pint with, I think, in many ways. And he's a great foil for Frasier, who's such a different character. And one of the big things of the show, one of the great hearts of the show, is the will they won't they between him and Daphne, which is one of my favorite of that kind of storylines. And those actors, from the very first episode they appeared together, had instant chemistry. Like, it was like lightning in the bottle, and it was so good watching them go through their various stages. There's a lot of fun to be had with Niles and his wife Maris, who we never see, and that's that's the whole, it's a thing sitcom does quite a lot. They did it in Cheers with Norm's wife Vera. They
do it in The Nanny with Fran's father. You never see Fran's dad. So
it becomes this thing of like, you could never live up to the hype. You could never live up to how they've described them. So you just never see them. And they have a lot of fun with that, because you'll have like parties where you're supposed to be at the same party, but you never actually see us. Sort of thing. But yeah, it's actually quite a smart thing they do, where he becomes almost like the long suffering one. And how even when he gets with Daphne, there's like complications. David Hyde Pierce is a great actor. He's such an underrated actor. I know he's gone on to like do slightly more dramatic stuff as well, but he brings a lot of heart to Niles. He makes him a classic sort of lovable underdog, and a lot of humanity. And yeah, definitely him and Daphne are one of my favorite sitcom pairings as far as shipping goes. So yeah, great character, one of the best on that show. So Niles Crane is my number 26.
Nice. I've never watched Frasier. I don't know, it just was one of those sitcoms I just never got around to watching. But the guy who plays Niles always reminds me of Neil Patrick Harris. So every time I see him, I think of
I
Barney.
can see that.
Yeah. But no, that was fun. There was another fun list. Bit of variety, not for me. Sorry for the 6 Buffy characters in a row, but unfortunately, that's what happens. But that was fun. And we'll see as we go forward if we have any more crossovers.
Okay. We will. So there's going to be 2 more parts, as we said, and the 4th part we're going to do on stream, because we obviously love doing those streams and those experiments that could go either way. Could turn into a bit of a shambles, but it'll be a fun shambles, even if it is. But yeah, there's something we enjoy about doing it live, and obviously getting the reactions from you guys as we do it. Let us know your thoughts in the comments, what you think of some of our picks. You can also do your own lists if you fancy, like maybe just do the numbers up to now, and you can wait till the other videos to do the rest. Whatever you want to do, but give us your list, some of your favorite TV characters. And yeah, we've been talking about some of the TV that we do. We're obviously covering Buffy at the moment, so we've done the 5 seasons, 2 more to do, so we will get them done, and then we're going to go on to Angel as well. So we've got some quite big plans for TV shows. I know at some point we're going to do Lost as well, because that's a big favorite.
Oh, that'll be a roller coaster.
So much to talk about. Yeah, such a
those will be long videos. I feel 5-hour videos coming on for Lost.
So do I. Funny enough, yeah. But yeah, and I do newer TV shows. I review Star Trek Discovery, which I do weekly, and other shows I've been doing them The Scare, which is the Amazon show. So I do various TV and also film reviews, so you can catch some of that. And I've got Rachel's details on the screen, so that is her channel link if you want to go and check it out, and sub if you haven't. But Rachel, if you want to say a little bit about your channel.
Yeah, guys, like Keith said, come follow me. I do video essays on movies and TV shows, not as frequently as I like to, but I try to get one up at least once a month. My last one was an Avatar video. I'm currently working on a couple of others, so come and follow me. The posting might be sporadic, but I promise it's worth it when it happens. So just follow the link.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Thanks.
So thanks, guys, for listening. Again, keep watching TV and let us know some of your favorite TV characters. Like and subscribe. Also support me on patreon.com/boardnow for just $1 a month to help keep the channel coming and the content. And we'll be back with the next part soon. Thanks, guys. See you soon. Bye.